Okay, welcome to GrangeTV for our second episode. My name is Fabricio. I'm here with Anthony Seibold, the head coach of South Sydney Rabbitohs, and David Roberts, TAFE extraordinaire. Anthony, how are you?
Yeah, good, Fab. Great to be here. Good to chat.
Done a little bit of work with you in the past. Been really excited actually to have you on here, and that I'm just curious how you've been and how's the transition going from, I suppose, assistant coach into coach, and the actual transition in the season. How's that all going?
Yeah, it's been surreal in some ways, particularly early because having been an assistant coach for so long, it's all about the footy. It's technical, tactical, physical side of things, the mental side of things. Whereas as a head coach, it sort of, I suppose, encompasses a lot of things away from footy as well. Whether it's roster management, salary cap, media, player managers, members. So I think that's probably been the biggest change. Just that there's a lot of extras added on to just the footy side of things. Certainly puts pressure on your time, but you just need to be well planned and manage your time really effectively. And I'm pretty lucky. I've had a couple of really good mentors, over my whole coaching career so far. Whether it was Mads, Grad Bellamy, Trent Barrett, Kevin Walters with the Origin, I've been really fortunate.
Because your tenure as an assistant coach, is that longer than most people's would have been?
I think it varies. I think I was quite fortunate that I got an opportunity back in 2005. So I was 31 at the time, so not long retired. I'd done a Bachelor of Teaching and a Masters of Education whilst I played, and I worked in schools for 2 years, worked at university level for about 16 months. As a lecturer at the University of Southern Queensland. So I got an opportunity to go back to the UK as an assistant coach. Yeah, as I said, 31 turning 32, and I was quite young. So it's been a pretty long journey, but at various levels. I didn't start right at the top. In the NRL, I went to a second division club in the UK to start with as a coach. Worked my way up there into the Super League and then sort of progressed ever since I come back to Australia.
I think David and I, we both work together at TAFE. Dave's the Director of Aboriginal Education, and one of the things that we speak about a lot is, I think David was the one that brought it up, was the concept of having like a master and apprentice, and to me it seems like you've done like a massive apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And that just when you look at how long you've spent a lot of time in Europe.
Yeah.
Second division, first division, came out here, Origin and all that stuff. How, to me anyways, it looks like that'd be an extremely enriching experience. It can only be helpful to you now as a head coach. What's your opinion on that? How prevalent is that in the game today?
I think it probably varies from person to person. I think, 11 years is a long time, I suppose, to have assistant coaching roles or, head coaching like under 20s when I was at the Storm and so on. But I think it's held me in really good stead because, I haven't been fast-tracked. I haven't, wasn't, although I played NRL and played in the English Super League, I wasn't an elite player. So I've had to sort of, I suppose, open my own doors and knock down some doors along the way. But, I'm really curious as a coach. I'm a lot, I consider myself to be a lifelong learner. I love learning and looking at other ways of doing things and looking at other sports and other coaches. So I've been very curious along the journey. But I think the 11 years, I've had good years, I've had poor years. I've been at the best clubs. Worked with the best teams like the Origin, but also 1 year I was an assistant to a team that come last in the English Super League. So I've been here, there, and everywhere, which I think helps me to understand that there's going to be some challenges along the way in this current role. And there's no doubt about that. I mean, there's real optimism around the Rabbitohs at the moment, but I'm realistic enough to know that we've got a long way to go. And I think that the experiences I've had over that long journey certainly will help me, be well prepared for this role, and anything that's thrown at me, I think, I'll be ready to handle.
I think when you look at that with people, like you only see like the end result, like when people are real they're really, really caught up in that if you're going to win or if you lost or whatever, and people don't understand, like 11 years as assistant coach or 11 years in that field, and then plus your playing career from, I don't know, 10 years old onwards or whatever.
6,
Yeah, so you've been forged in that game. So to me, even because when I met you, you were assistant coach with Maguire, my business partner, as the grappling coach there. But and just speaking to both of you is like not good or bad either way. But there's things that, like when you're talking to someone, and I've been around a lot of different coaches, and there was stuff that, just little things that you were saying that I was like, this guy's like, he's like, you clued on. And then being how I am, because I like to know who I'm talking to, you know. So, and I looked up that you did have a not just a background in teaching, like, you know, we're all teachers here, but you also have a background in like academia. You were teaching at a very, very high level. And what's that transition like, and what's your ability, do you think, to be able to bring those two worlds together?
Well, first of all, I love my time working at university level. I as you said, you know, I worked with academics in that particular world. So I got a lot out of it because you know, as part of some terrific research papers, you know, people like Tim Gabbett, Richard Johnson, you know, guys like that who've done a lot of research in and around the performance and sports science, you know, of not only rugby league but a number of sports worldwide. Liam Kildoff from Swansea University as well. I was part of some stuff that Liam produced as well. But it's helped me in and around research and being curious, and the planning that's involved with working at university level. You know, feedback you have to give students, feedback you have to give the other staff. I think that's sort of given me a real good insight into what's required in this job. You know, I think communication's a real key to this position, and any coaching position, whether it's an assistant coach or head coach role. I think communication and clarity and around the message that you're trying to give to the players individually or collectively is a real key for us. So I think there's a lot of transfer. Looking back, I wouldn't have done it any other way. You know, I'm glad I had an opportunity to teach for a couple of years at school level, and really fond of them. My 14 months that I had at USQ up in Queensland as well, because as I said, there's been a vast amount of transfer to my current role.
I think it's really Tim Gabbett. You brought him up as someone that I've followed for a little bit. And I actually had a friend that went up there, Justin Lang. He's a friend of mine, and he went up there because he's an exercise physiologist, works with Rob and works with a few different people, and he went up there just like off his own say-so, spent his own money to go up there and just have a chat with Tim about sports performance, and that's something that I want to do. I'd love to have him on the podcast in the future. Great, just sounds like someone that really knows about that performance and everything.
He just gets it. It's the best way that I can probably describe it. Tim was probably one of the first people, certainly within Australia, but even I suppose worldwide, who started to talk about the peak demands of the game and worst case scenarios, and even in wrestling or jiu-jitsu or
combat sports in general.
Sports, there are peak demands. You know, and you need to if you train for the average demands of the sport, for me that's under-preparing for your sport or your event. So Tim was one of the first to do that, and I actually sort of I'd met Tim many years ago, but only very briefly. And I think it was 2011 that I caught up with Tim again, and I was working for the North Queensland Cowboys feeder club in the Queensland Cup, and Tim was doing some work with the Cowboys, and he spoke to me about doing a year-long project with me. And every time that the team that I was looking after from North Queensland, we travelled to Brisbane, he'd actually put the GPS on our players at Queensland Cup level, which is semi-professional, although we did have some full-time players from the Cowboys. And what we were looking at were some intensity indicators. So back then it was metres per minute, which is probably for us now we look more at accelerations, decelerations, but at the time we were looking at metres per minute. We were looking at position-specific indicators as well. But he was the first one that sort of, I suppose, poked me in and around looking at training for the peak demands of the worst case scenario. And he now travels worldwide. He's very well regarded throughout world sport. He goes to talk to different clubs, different, academics across the world around worst case scenarios in different sports, but also he talks about training harder but smarter.
Yep.
Yeah, so he's a very interesting guy. I've got a great amount of respect for Tim, and last time I spoke to him was before Christmas. I keep in regular contact with him.
That's awesome. I think some of the stuff we take it, I guess, we follow him. Justin spoke to him around monitoring the training loads and just being aware of that. I think that's some of the stuff that we implemented in our training as well. But it's definitely something that I'd like to follow up further with him. Yeah,
definitely. I think Tim's a real common sense person, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because sometimes I think, in my experience, some of the research is potentially good in theory, but more difficult to do in practice.
Absolutely,
or harder to transfer in practice. Where the thing I love about Tim, and guys like Calvin Giles, and there's a number of others who I sort of lean upon. It's a real common sense approach and easily transferable. And Tim, as I said, he's a very smart guy. And I've learned on him quite a bit. More recent times, Calvin Giles. We've had company. Calvin's worth the listeners, doing a little bit of research on John Pryor, who worked with Eddie Jones with the Japanese World Cup Rugby Union side in 2015. He's another one that I've done a little bit of work with recently, who really values sort of their opinion in and around that performance space.
Because I see a lot of the stuff that I guess with the work that we do with Rob and a few of the other fighters, it's funny because Rob's extremely accessible to people. They can just come into where he trains, kind of thing. And one of the things is you're open to people's opinions, which are the worst thing you can listen to. Even if they're right, a lot of the times you don't want to hear them. But I also see all the jargon and all the new age stuff that's associated with, being in the industry. And then when I hear people, like you said, it's just a common sense approach, just keep it simple with the training. And one of the things that I was going to ask you is how do you think having that education background, that academia background that you have, help you with your critical thinking and your ability to, causation doesn't equal correlation doesn't equal causation kind of thing? How does that help?
Yeah, it's helped me enormously. I think, you talk about critical thinking. One thing that it's enabled me to do is excuse my language, sort of cut the bullshit.
Absolutely. Go say whatever you want, Anthony. Say whatever you want, mate.
It's certainly helped me because I imagine you guys get it in your industry too. We get a whole heap of salesmen or snake
the
oil,
worst. I can't stand it.
Salesmen, contact you through different mediums and so on, always trying to sell you the brand new way of doing things, but. Like I said, a common sense approach is a simple approach, but an effective approach. And I've sort of spoken about what we've sort of changed in our preparation here, and it's something that we use called tactical periodization. But effectively, it's a common sense approach. It's just making sure that you integrate the physical, tactical, technical, and behavioural side of things. It's pretty simple. It sounds sexy, but it's
absolutely
it's a common sense approach. That's pretty much what it is. So I think we need to sort of cut out the bullshit and get on with doing the simple things really well. Simplicity for me is a real key.
When you talk about tactical periodization, do you want to explain a little bit? Because I heard a couple of interviews, with yourself in regards to tactical periodization. I've heard, from some, high-level coaches in the soccer or / football world. We implement our own version of that as well. And I was just curious what your thoughts were on that.
Yeah, so
if you want to expand on that.
It's a theory that's been around for a little while. And in actual fact, when I was actually lecturing at university, which is way back in 2000, end of 2006 or 2007 into 2008, it's something that sort of I read a lot about. Now it's a theory, I suppose you'd call it, or a practice that come out of Portuguese soccer, and it's now sort of been implemented by Pep Guardiola at the clubs he's worked at, Jose Mourinho, Eddie Jones in Rugby Union, and a number of other.
Yeah, Mourinho was the one I read about.
Yeah, you know, a number of other coaches. But effectively, what tactical periodisation is about is that integrated approach. So it's merging the physical, the tactical, the technical, and the psychological, behavioural side of things. Now, to give you a real-life example how we would potentially do that in our sport is, let's just talk about high-speed running, which is really important for rugby league players, you know. Being exposed to high-speed running is a real key because we have to do that in our game at times.
Absolutely.
So if the physical is the high-speed running component of it, the tactical or the technical is trained on the same day. So I'll give you an example. We might do some high-speed running with our performance coaches on a Monday. Well, we do all our kick chase, +1, +2, we call it all our kick chase. You think about a kick chase, that's where we do the most amount of high-speed running in a game of rugby league. So it doesn't make sense to do your high-speed running with your performance coaches on the Monday, then the Tuesday you do your kick chase practice because you're exposing the guys to high-speed running 2 days in a row, which puts them at risk. So effectively, in a nutshell, it's high-speed running with performance coaches, and you might do that for a block of 10 minutes, into a block of 10 minutes doing your kick chase +1, +2 practice. So again, it's a pretty common sense approach.
Absolutely.
Then on your Tuesday, you'll do all your acceleration, deceleration work with your performance coaches, and then from a footy point of view, we'll practice a lot of our goal line defence. You think about when you're defending your line, you're up hard off the line, you're trying to put some pressure on the halfbacks or the ball players. Then you have to reload really quickly back, which is an acceleration. But then you need to decelerate as you get to the line. Then you need to accelerate off the line. So again, it's a common sense approach of if accel decels our physical attribute that we're training on the Tuesday, well, it makes sense to do the football side of things on that particular day. So that's one way of doing it. The other thing about tactical periodisation is, we talk about there's only 4 moments in a game. So if you think about rugby league, there's only 4 moments we train over here at Redfern, and that's attack, defence, transition to attack, and transition to defence. They're the only 4 moments that we practice.
Fully get it.
So every minute of every training session, we're practicing in one of those 4 moments. So that's at the very heart of tactical periodisation. And again, I think some coaches probably talk about it or know a little bit about it. I'm really lucky that our head of performance, Paul Devlin, and myself, we both used to work at Melbourne Storm a number of years ago. We've always kept in contact even when we went to different clubs and down different pathways, but we've always been very well connected as far as sharing ideas, sharing information, looking to better ourselves. So I'm quite fortunate that Devs has a real deep understanding of it, and I've been really lucky that I've had access to guys like Eddie Jones and Calvin Giles and John Pryor and all these guys who are experienced in actually implementing that way. Now, there's more than one way of doing things, as you guys know, but that's my way of doing things. And it's very different to other coaches in a lot of ways, but there's more than one ways to get success. So we know it's not going to be easy, but we thought that for this particular group at this particular time, just having a real common sense approach to our preparation is something that we think is significant for us. So we've chipped away at it during the pre-season, and we want to transfer that to our game day performances and make sure we keep heading in the right direction.
All right, just I'm going to kind of move away from football for a second. I'm going to come back to it for sure, and I think inevitably it's going to lead back. The conversation's going to lead back to football. Happens with Alex. Me and Alex are well, I won't talk about jiu-jitsu or grappling or whatever, and then we start talking, and then eventually it goes back to that anyways. Who is Anthony Seibold? Who are you? What do you do when you're at home? How'd you get into football?
Well, I grew up in a place called Rockhampton, which is up in central Queensland. So Mum and Dad had me when they were very young. Mum was only 17, Dad was only 18. So, my younger brother and younger sister are a lot younger than me. I think, when I was a little fella, Dad was playing local footy up for a team called Rocky Brothers, so I can still sort of remember being a ball boy or sitting on the sideline watching him play. So Dad was a real hero for me growing up, as most dads are for kids. And he played for Rockhampton Brothers, so I always, from the moment I sort of can remember, I always had a blue and white jersey on up there, and a ball boy from when I was really young to probably about 14 or 15 for brothers. And so I suppose Dad sort of introduced me to footy. He was playing, or just at the end of his career, local footy, and I started playing as a 6-year-old for brothers in the local comp up there. So I loved it. Made some really good friends early. That one of them, Ray Busby, still my best friend today. That I met when I was 6. We speak to each other a couple of times a week. Still, he's now on the Gold Coast, but. So that's sort of what got me into footy. Who I am away from footy now, I've got 3 young daughters who, need a dad. They don't want a footy coach, so they need a dad. So I try and prioritise, time with them, and it's really difficult to do that as well.
Do you think it helps it, to round you off as a person or whatever? Do you think it helps that the fact that you've got daughters, and because I think if you had a son, inevitably the conversation, even if it doesn't go to football, it'll go to sport.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Do you think having daughters helps you work on another side of your brain that?
Yeah, definitely helps me understand. Helps me understand them more because, my youngest daughter, she has no interest in footy at all. So if I have a bad day, even when I was an assistant coach, or if it's been a long day here, in the pre-season, I go home, she's not really interested. You know what I mean?
How old is she?
She's 8. My oldest girl is 15. And my middle girl is 12, so or turning 12. So they love their sport. They all play netball, basketball, touch footy, but more so netball and basketball. So I go and watch them play whenever I can. It's a good.
Because I see it's so different.
Yeah, good break away from the footy. And I can just go and chill out when I watch the netball or the basketball, if that makes sense. I'm not worried about tactics, or I'm not worried about the result. I sit there and just enjoy it, I suppose. I'm not a loud sort of person. I'm not one of the parents who are singing out from the sideline or telling the kids what to do or anything like that. I just sit there and I just enjoy sport for sport's sake, So I spend a lot of my time doing that, and I love having a swim at the beach as well. So it gets me away from footy and helps me relax. So that's sort of what I do. I read books. I don't do a whole heap. I don't have a whole heap of hobbies. I suppose I've turned my hobby into my job. So I'm pretty. I'm a country boy still at heart. So I sort of don't like the bustling city too much, but it's
lucky you just live in the heart of the city.
So as I said, there's a good opportunity for me to get away from footy and clear my head when I get home.
Your surname Seibold, is that German?
It is, yeah. So my granddad grew up in Germany, a place about an hour outside of Nuremberg, called Vilseck, which I've been to once. I went there when I was playing in the English Super League. We played a Friday night game, so I went and spent the weekend. He was back in Germany visiting some of his relatives, so I actually went and spent a weekend there.
Cool.
It was cool. I saw the grave sites of my ancestors. Spent a couple of days in the village that he grew up as a little boy. Met some of his relatives, so it was really good. And that's 19 years ago now. And my granddad's still alive up in Rocky, but effectively he came across here in 1955 on a boat from Germany. It was sort of when the Snowy River project was going ahead, and they were looking for, from my understanding, Europeans who sort of had trades and skills, So he came out here and worked on the Snowy River project. That finished. He went to Melbourne, and my nan was a nurse, and she was from up central Queensland, but she actually was nursing in Melbourne at the time, and they met and fell in love and got married, and my dad was born. And in actual fact, when my dad was born, my granddad hadn't become an Australian citizen. So I've actually got a German passport because my granddad wasn't an Australian citizen. Therefore, my dad was classified as a German national, even though he hasn't actually got a passport. And he's only ever been to Germany once, but then because it's passed down through fathers in the German law, because Dad was classified as a national, then I was. So in 2002, I think it was, 2002, I ended up getting a passport, which I've still got today. So I've got a dual passport. I've got an Australian passport and a German passport.
And your mum's side? Like,
yeah, so mum's side of the family's from Gympie.
Where's Gympie for?
Gympie is sort of southeast Queensland, and she's from there. Her dad was a train driver, so so really working class roots. He got transferred to Rockhampton, and Winton, then Rockhampton. Winton's out in the middle of nowhere, out near Longreach, but then to Rockhampton, and she finished off school there. And both my nan and granddad on that side of the family passed away now. But so mum sort of moved around a couple of places because my granddad was a train driver, and she's sort of from Gympie originally. And she's still got family there in Gympie, but I don't get to see them too often at all. Sort of Rocky is probably where the bulk of the sort of family that I keep in touch with live.
Where's home for you now? Like, is home Sydney now? Would it be Sydney?
Well, it is for the moment. We've been, really sort of transient, I suppose. The last, even when I played footy, I sort of bounced around a few different clubs here in Australia and overseas. I don't see Rocky as home anymore. Mum and Dad still live there. My brother still lives there with his family and some other relatives like my uncle and so on. But the last time I went home there was last March. So whenever I'm done, coaching in rugby league, I won't move back to Rockhampton.
What's it like, Anthony? Because my understanding is like you bounced around Europe, kind of thing. Then did you play in Germany?
No, it was a funny story actually. I was coaching. I'd actually finished playing footy. It was 2006. And so I'd finished playing footy in 2005, and my last year I played footy was back in the Queensland Cup, which is a part-time, semi-professional comp in Brizzy, and I was helping coach and then play for the Broncos team, which is called the Clydesdales. So all the legends at the time, legends now, but at the time were coming through that team. So Sam Thaiday, Barry Barnes, who played for the Wallabies, Nev Costigan, who played for Queensland Origin, Greg Eastwood, who plays for Bulldogs now, but has also played for New Zealand. There was a stack of kids coming through. So I was helping coach them. I was 31, and Wayne Bennett asked me to be player and help John Dixon with the team as a bit of a mentor. So I did that, and so I was teaching during the day and then going straight to training of an afternoon.
Teaching at a high school?
Yeah, Clevo McKillop, which is a Catholic high school, so I was teaching PE there. So teach during the day, shoot across to the Broncos, train at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, get home about 7:30, 8 o'clock or whatever, and then do it all again. A great group of guys, but long story short, so I finished playing at the end of that year, and John Dixon, who was a great mentor to me from the Broncos, he was at the Broncos for 10 years, he was one of Wayne's coaching staff there. He got a head coaching job with a second division club, and he said, listen, I know you've played over there, you know the lay of the land, would you consider coming back for 12 months and help?
Over there
is? In Wales.
Okay.
Yeah. Celtic Crusaders. He said, would you consider coming back, help me set up the club for 12 months? And I said, yeah, look, listen, it sounds like a great opportunity. So I went back there. Anyway, when I went back there, I got an email out of the blue by a guy from Halifax, which is in the north of England, who had German heritage, and he said, mate, would you be interested in coming across to Estonia, of all places?
Estonia?
Yeah, Estonia.
Do they have rugby league in Estonia?
Yeah.
I did not know that. Did you know that?
I didn't know that. And I don't know how much they had played, but anyway, they said, would you consider? And I said, well, give me the dates. Obviously, I'm coaching. We're quite busy. Anyway, it just so happened that we had a bye weekend, and Germany were playing Estonia that weekend. So I flew to Estonia. Didn't know a single soul in the team. Flew to Estonia on the Friday. Played for them on the Saturday. Flew back to the UK on the Sunday. So I actually played 5'8", and I hadn't played 5'8" since I was about 12 or 13. And I scored 3 tries, and I even kicked a couple of goals, and we won. And then the Estonian team, they weren't that great, to be fair. But as I said, I don't know how much rugby league they'd actually played. But it was a really good experience. It was a really humbling experience, because there were just guys who were just playing for the love of the sport, you know what I mean? And they're in countries that I didn't even know played rugby league. I didn't even know Germany had any idea about rugby. I knew they had rugby union, and league was only a very, very minor sport there, and they had one competition, and a lot of it was sort of 9-a-side competition, but they had some people who were really passionate about it. So to go and spend a weekend with them away in a foreign country, and they were really, I suppose, giving of accepting me into the group, and it was a crazy couple of days. Funny experience. We went out for a beer after the game, and there's a lot of Russians in Estonia, and they're all carrying guns, and it was just crazy. Yeah, it was crazy. So
like carrying guns on the street? Or?
Yeah, just carrying guns in the nightclubs and stuff like that. And there was like the security, almost like the airport security in some places, and it was a spin out. It was just crazy. It was a crazy couple of days. But it was really enjoyable because I
were you like you don't strike me as, but were you like a party animal kind of person?
You know what, when I was young, I did like a good time.
I would not have picked, would you have picked this guy? I would never have picked you.
No, definitely did. Probably too much when I was a young bloke in the Broncos.
Were you known as a party animal?
Yeah, when I was young, yeah.
I wouldn't like...
Yeah. Well, we had a good crew of boys, and footy was different back then. This is the early 90s, like you play hard, you go out and have a beer, and that's what you did, you know what I mean? It's totally different now, and probably as I got a bit older, towards the back end of playing footy, how sore you get, as you get older, you get sore, don't you? I remember being 31 and playing with all these young blokes. I'd be that sore after a game, and I'd have to teach as well. So I wasn't full time because they were all full time playing with the Broncos, and I was a teacher and then playing on the weekends and training during the week. So had to sort of be smarter about how I looked after myself if I was going to play footy and be competitive at it, because although I was 31, I still wanted to play as good a footy as I could. And I was really, one of my favourite years was that last year I played. I got players player and a really, really good team. And I was 31. And
what year was that?
2005.
So that was like during their heyday, like during the
Well, I had 92 to 95 at the Broncos when I was a kid, so 17 through to 21. I was playing reserve grade then when I was 17. And in 4 years, I just didn't progress, and that was a lot of that was my own fault, probably got a bit ahead of myself, as I said, probably socialised a little bit too much. I was at university at the time as well, and I probably just had a lot of distractions that I couldn't, I wanted to be distracted, if that made sense.
Yeah.
But then when I went to the Raiders, I went to Canberra in 97. And I was 23 by that stage, so I was a little bit more mature, and I wanted to play. I just wanted to play first grade, so I did whatever I could to play first grade down there. And I was really lucky. I played in a really good side in 1998 with Dave Ferner, who's now my assistant. He was one of our senior players. Brad Clyde, Laurie Daly, Ricky Stewart, Mel Meninga was our coach. Brett Mullins, all these legends. It was unreal to play with, and they were good guys. I had a ball, had a really good 2 years there playing footy, played good footy. And then I had a year to go on my contract, and London Broncos came calling from the Super League,
okay.
and it was at the stage where I was turning 26, and I'd never made any real money out of rugby league. Not that was an issue, but all I wanted to do was play first grade, and I never had any grand ambitions of playing 100 first grade games or 200 first grade games. That never sort of entered my head. I wanted to play first grade to, I suppose, prove a point, because not a lot of people from where I was from at the time had done that. And it took me a long while. I sort of kept at it because I didn't make my debut until I was 23, which is in some ways quite old at the time. But and I got an offer from the London Broncos, and it was triple the contract I was on at the Raiders.
So that was that during Super League?
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So the difference in money, like from say Super League in Europe.
At the time, yeah. For me in particular, it was a particularly good deal, and London Broncos were owned by Richard Branson at the time, and the Virgin owner.
Yeah,
and so they sort of were trying to put a real imprint there in London. And they did for a couple of years. Made a Challenge Cup final. They were getting some really healthy crowds playing out of the Stoop at Twickenham, which is where Harlequins, which is a famous rugby club, play out of over there. was a really good experience. I really enjoyed it, but when I went over there, I knew that I was probably giving up my NRL dream, but that didn't sort of worry me because I thought, you know what, I'd always wanted to play in the UK, and you know, I was earning good money. I was living in London, in West London, a beautiful spot. Lived near the River Thames there, not far from Richmond. Yeah, it was great. Like, yeah, really enjoyed my time there. But I knew that by taking that contract up, when I was finishing that contract, I was going to be 27 or 28 or whatever it was, and you know, I probably wouldn't get a look in back home, but that wasn't an issue. I ended up staying over there for a little while longer.
What's it like? I have wait, 2 questions. First one, I'm going to go backwards a little bit because I'm genuinely curious, and I'm one of these people that find it hard to let go of stuff. I need to ask you, have you got any good stories about your party days? Because I can't get over it. Like, he looks like
I'm trying to think.
And Alex, you know, Alex,
he
was singing your praises. He goes, he's a very serious guy. This guy's the one. And now give us one. You got to give us one.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, like, I certainly enjoyed myself. There's no doubt about that. You know,
did you get arrested? Did you?
No.
Did you steal a car?
No, nothing like that. No.
Did you end up at like a bachelorette party dressed as a policeman?
No, it was more. I used to love a good dress up on Mad Mondays.
Oh, there we go.
Of course, yeah. And then I had a couple of good Mad Mondays. One was we ended up in Dublin at the Temple Bar, which is a row of pubs there in London. That was 1999, and we had a really good couple of days there. And at the time, the Gaelic. I think it's Gaelic footy, the grand final was, I can't remember if it was Gaelic footy or hurling, but it was one of the big, it was like their NRL grand final, their AFL grand final. There was a group of us guys from the London Broncos on our trip away there, so that was a really good couple of days. Another time we had a great trip away to the Munich Beer Fest, which we hired all these tents, like this big tent city there that all the Aussies and the Kiwis and South Africans go to. And we hired, a group of us hired these tents. We had a fantastic few days there in Hofbrauhaus and Lowenbrau House, and so there's some really good memories. And like I said, when I was growing up at the Broncos, you trained really hard, like you trained exceptionally hard. They were probably ahead of the game. And you played as hard as you could, but then after that you used to get free drinks at Sydney Rabbitohs, so I sort of didn't. it's closed now, Sydney Rabbitohs, but I sort of didn't miss that too much. But yeah, they're a good time. Looking back now, you have a real laugh about it. But in some ways, I do have some regrets about my time at the Broncos. I don't think anywhere else. Like at the Raiders, I was really committed and I trained hard, and I think I was one of the fittest and strongest at the Raiders when I played there, and I certainly was at London Broncos. Even when I went back to the Clydesdales, my last year of playing footy in 05, I was really committed and trained really hard. And, even though I was 31, I was one of the strongest and fittest, in the group there. The only time, as I said, I probably had the world at my feet as a kid there. I sort of captained the Queens under-19 side. I was playing in teams with like Brad Thorne, who's a dual international, Wendell Saylor, who's a dual international, a whole host of other guys who really, kicked on, won premierships, played test footy. And I'm not saying I was in that category by any means, but, I was given the opportunity there, and I probably took it a little bit for granted, if that made sense. And some other young boys, like Shane Webke was an example, who come there probably 2 years after me. He was the same age as me, so I actually got signed when I was younger in front of Shane, but he come there and he was hungry, if that made sense.
I've read his book.
Yeah, he was hungry, and
he's a committed dude.
Yeah, Brad Thorne was another one. Like they were hungry and they were committed, and they're probably a little bit more mature than me at that particular time. They went on to have unbelievable. Brad Thorne was like a freak, and Webke was the same. So, but I learned a few lessons out of that. I reckon if I hadn't gone through that sort of up and down a few years there at Brisbane, then I don't think I'd be the coach that I am today, to be honest.
Absolutely.
I think that, what was I, 17 through to 21, which is, your formative sort of years there. I learned a lot of lessons and had some disappointments, had some great times too. Not many 17-year-olds back then played reserve grade, and sat on the bench for first grade at the time, although I didn't get on. I was playing with and against test players back then, and the old reserve grade comp was a really tough competition. So you're playing men who played test footy. My first game was against Newcastle Knights, who had a bloke called Sam Stewart, who was the New Zealand Test captain at the time, and I remember running into him. He was probably early 30s at the time, he was like a...
And you were 17?
Yeah. Like
what position were you playing?
I played lock that day.
Yeah.
And but it was a great experience. I mean, I remember being on cloud nine. Dad came down with my younger brother, and although it wasn't first grade, it felt like first grade. If that meant, for me, it was a good thing. But like you grow from every opportunity. And one thing I did do and stuck at when I was in the Broncos, I did my teaching degree. So I started my first year out of school and I finished it when I was 21. So even though I had 4 years there, and in some ways I won't say wasted the opportunity, but I didn't reach my potential there. I finished with a teaching degree, and that held me in really good stead because what it showed me, and it was hard because at times I was going to give it away. I was thinking, I don't want to go to uni today, or I don't really want to put the time in and get this.
I was never like that with uni. I was always,
Yeah, exactly. But you know what I mean?
100%.
And so one thing that taught me was to be a bit resilient and be persistent.
Uni, I think that's probably like, aside from everything else and all the stuff you learn, I think it's probably, if there's one thing that, especially if you've got other things that you're doing, like I was coaching and training and competing as well, and it makes you want to quit. Uni makes you want to quit. Like if you're doing that type of stuff and you just dig in.
Yeah, and I did, mate. And because I was doing 6-week block prac placements, throughout my time there, and that was challenging because sometimes you'd have a Friday night footy game at the old ANZ Stadium up in Brizzy, and I was playing reserve grade, so it'd be maybe a 5:30 kickoff or 6 o'clock kickoff or whatever, and I'd have to teach in the classroom till 3 o'clock as part of my prac placement, and then race off the other side of town to ANZ and get ready for the game. So there was times I thought, you know what, I'm just going to roll with footy, but I was really proud of myself that I stuck at it and was persistent with, because then off the back of that, I actually, as I grew a little bit older, I fell in love with learning, if that made sense. So when I was finishing off my time playing for Hull KR, which is another club I played for in England, I started a Masters of Education, which I finished in 2005, and I just loved it. I craved it. It was outstanding because it was just an avenue away from footy, if that made sense.
Absolutely.
So I'd come home from training at Hull and I'd sit down from books and go through the different units and modules I had to do, and I did really well. And I got a really good GPA, and this is how I got offered the job at USQ. So I did my Masters externally through USQ while I was overseas, and I pretty much topped the class. I had a really good grade point average, and from that I got a job offer, and they said, listen, would you consider coming back from the UK to do the role? So that's pretty much how I sort of got that opportunity through USQ, and I would never have had that opportunity if I hadn't finished off my bachelor of teaching, and one thing leads to the other. I was really proud that I did that. So although, as I said, I didn't fulfil my potential at Brisbane from a playing footy point of view, I was proud that I sort of stuck at something, and I think as I said, I think it's something that's really helped me.
How hard is it for you to move your family around in that? Because if your girl's 15, so she was around when you were in Europe?
Yeah. So she was born, I actually had to leave her when she was 4 weeks old and go to the UK because I'd signed a contract with quite a famous Northern England team called Hull KR. Hull FC, their rivals, were just out here last week and played the Dragons in a trial game, but I was the red and whites, they're the black and whites. So I had to get over there to start my contract, so I had to leave her behind. She was only 4 weeks old, and then she came across there when she was 3 months.
Oh, that's still a long time.
Yeah.
It should look totally different, eh?
Yeah. And then, so we had a couple of years there playing there. I came back, as I said, to teach at high school, play for the Broncos feeder team and help mentor those boys there. And then I had the job offer to go back to Wales, so I went back to Wales. And then, as I said, I finished my Masters of Education. The university offered me a job, so I then came back from Wales to the University of Southern Queensland. And then I had 14 months doing that. And what happened was the club that I helped set up got promoted and
because they have relegation
promotion, so they won promotion, and then it was getting serious. You know what I mean? They were 12 months away, effectively, from potentially being in Super League, which was their version of the NRL. You know, and they rang me and said, "Listen, it's getting serious here now. Like, if we put in a good 12 months, we'll be in Super League the following year. So we want you to come back." So again, they offered me a really good contract to go back there, and it was a job that I thought long about, but it was a multiple skills role, if that made sense. So in the UK, you've got to understand, particularly the lower level clubs, they don't have the resources like the Rabbitohs do or the Broncos do or whatever else. So often you're doing multiple jobs. And so when I went back, I was doing a football manager's role, assistant coach role, and an S&C role. So it was 3 roles into one. Now, it's crazy busy, but you know what? I reckon it helped me develop immensely as a coach, because what it gave me a couple of different perspectives. It gave me the perspective that, for instance, here, like our football managers, Brock and Mark Allison, and gave me perspective on the logistical side of sport. Strength and conditioning guys. So we've got Jared Wade and Cater Rutherford here, who are very good. But it gave me, I had to plan strength programs. I had to go and seek out people to help me develop those strength programs. So I met like a guy called Liam Kildall from University of Swansea there, and he helped sort of me put some programs together. But again, looking at our sport, what's specific to our sport inside the gym, and then obviously the coaching point of view. Well, I already had some experience in doing that, but it was a multi-layered role, which really, I suppose, exposed me to some different parts of the game. So it gave me a really broad understanding. So I was pretty fortunate from that regard.
So on that, as a coach, what are some? Starting with an assistant coach, so what are the qualities you think that maybe made you and can make someone a great assistant coach? Because just on me and just my short relationship I've had with you guys and seeing other assistant coaches and working with other people, the assistant coach is a real pivotal role. It's not like, and I'm not, to any assistant coach out there, I'm saying it's not. What a lot of people think it's like the gopher of the coach. It's not at all, and I never thought it was. No. But it's a very pivotal role, because you're the guy that people go to. Yeah. You're the guy doing a lot of the legwork. Yeah. And the head coach has to delegate and do. But what makes a great assistant coach? Yeah, there's a couple of things. So one is trust. So you need to I suppose build trust in your head coach. To delegate to you. You know what I mean? Like, I think all head coaches should delegate and need to delegate different roles. So you need to earn the trust of the head coach. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to disagree and commit, if that makes sense. It's a good little saying I got out of one of the American sporting clubs I went to, and effectively what it means is you don't have to necessarily agree with the coach. So you need to challenge the head coach, and you need to give your opinion. But you know what? At the end of the day, the head coach makes the final decision. So when the head coach makes that final decision, you might have disagreed with it, and you might have given your opinion, but you need to commit to whatever the decision the head coach has made. And I think that makes a good assistant coach as well. I think thirdly, assistant coach is really key in your club, because they've almost got, I suppose, that rapport with the playing group, if that makes sense. Like a lot of players are sort of comfortable coming and sharing concerns or trying to use the assistant coaches to get better as players. You know what I mean? Often, players will see the head coach as the big bad boss in some ways, and it's not like that in every environment, but I think the assistant's got a really key role to play in building positive relationships between the staff and the playing group. So there's some really key things. I think the other one is, and it's in whatever industry, work ethic. If you don't have if you think you just want, like I see a lot of ex-players, a lot of ex-elite players, I'm sure you guys see it in your sport as well. Every day. They think, I know footy, and I was a good footy player, so I'm going to be a good coach because I know footy. But there's a couple of things that come with that. If you're not thorough with what you do and you don't have a work ethic, you're not going to make it as an assistant coach, because it's long hours and the devil's in the detail, so to speak. So you've got to watch a lot of vision, you've got to review a lot of training sessions, you've got to be real well planned. And it's not what you know, it's what the players know, if that makes sense. So, it's how. Yeah. If I always think of coaching like this is like, if I know 10 units of football and 12, but my players, I can get them to know 8, and you can only get yours to know 3. Who cares what you know?
Exactly. Yeah, it's not what you know. And I reckon there's a lot of, I've done a lot of research on EPL clubs, English Premier League clubs, and they, for a long time, went down the route of hiring ex-elite players as their managers, and they were good, very elite players, but they didn't know how to manage people. They didn't know how to plan. They didn't know how to review. They didn't know how to give feedback. Because when you're a player, if I'm a senior player and I say something to the rest of the group, the players will listen. But if you're an assistant coach and you don't know how to help the players will stop listening, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I think, I see a lot of players come to the role, or ex-players come to the role thinking, it's great to be involved. We train for an hour on the field and, they do their gym and then we're home by lunch. It's not like that. Like the staff here, I'm in every day. I leave home every day, 4:45, 5 o'clock at the latest. I'm here by 5:30 at the very latest. Well, Peter Janel and Dave Ferner, who are my assistants, they're coming in, if not similar time, 15, 20 minutes later than me. And then we all leave here about 6 o'clock, 6:30 of the night time. You know what I mean? So they're long days. There's a lot of detail on what you got to do, but that's what you got to do to be successful. And I've had pretty good mentors along the way. Like Bellyache and the crew of guys I worked with down at the Storm had an incredible work ethic, but they were very thorough. So it wasn't work for work's sake. It was very detailed. There's some I was really lucky that I've had some good mentors.
What makes a good head coach, a great head coach?
Well, that's a difficult one for me to answer.
But you've had some good ones.
I've had some really good ones.
I'm sure you've had bad ones. We don't have to name them. But
so Craig Bellamy. I mean, everyone obviously knows who Bellyache is. So the things I saw in him were there's a couple of things. One, he had a terrific work ethic. He's very thorough. You talk about being detailed. He's very detailed, particularly watching the opposition. What trends are going to come on the weekend. I know he had
with pattern recognition.
Yeah, pattern recognition. Trends. Yeah, looking at trends. He's very, very thorough with his trends. But you know what? He cared, and I'll show you a little example. And I remember this, and I'm sure you've had it with some bosses that or coaches that they've lit a flame in you that you want to do. You want to go that extra mile. In business world in America, they call it the discretionary effort. There's that 10% or 15% discretionary effort. And it's Bellyache.
And it can go the other way too.
And it can go the other way. And I'll give you an example. So just when my kids have been sick, and say for instance, I had to race off from work, there was 2 times I had to do that. One, we were playing, I was with the Storm, we played Penrith at Penrith, and we're sitting in a hotel on Tuesday morning, we played a Monday night down there. I get a phone call from a babysitter who used to look after the kids of a morning, and my middle girl had a fit, and I'm thinking, shit, I've got to get back to Melbourne. So the club straight away got me on the next flight. I get back there, she's in hospital, and everything was okay in the end, but it gives you a big fright. Well, that night, Bellyache gives you a call. Just, how's everything? Make sure you take as long a time off that you need, you know what I mean? That's your priority. There's another time I was at training and was with the NRL team coming into a big semi-final that weekend, and my other daughter had fainted at school, and I got a phone call, said, listen, she's fainted at school, had to go do some blood tests, and her white blood cell level was quite high, so we had to get some more tests. Well, I sort of, as you do,
just even when you said it then, I just said,
shit, well, this is serious. So who rings that, that night, just how is everything? What do you need? And everything was, very fortunate. Everything was fine. You know what I mean? It was just a virus, but they just needed to do some extra testing because the cell can. And that sort of stuck out to me. And Frank Panisi, who was the director of football down there, he was very similar. They cared about you as a person first. And I reckon one of the lessons I've learned as a coach is, it's not what you know. It's not what I know about X's and O's. Obviously, I need to produce a team that's competitive with their performances, and in a lot of ways, that's judged on wins and losses. And I understand that that's the nature of professional sport. But building positive relationships with players, developing players to become better players, and having an effective game model, they're a couple of things. But relationship with the players for me is at the top of the list. And all the research and all the professional development I've done, it's sort of if you don't build positive relationships with the players and your other staff, well, they're not going to have that discretionary effort that's required. And you look at, I went to Google recently in New York and spent a day there, and the workers there all kept telling me, come back to the same point, we'll do whatever it takes to get the job done, if it means working back later, whatever, because Google look after us so well. Like the employees there, and it's a big multinational company, as you're aware, it's massive, but the company makes them so feel so valued that they'll work the extra mile, they'll work the extra few hours because they get fed really well, and there's a gym there that they can use, and there's all these different things that look after the well-being and the welfare of the employees. So for me, relationships are first and foremost, and having a positive relationships are real key. And I'll say one other thing about this. The other thing is that I think you talk about what's an effective head coach. In my research, in my professional development, the very, very best head coaches, and Balak's one of these guys, they serve the players, not the other way around.
Very good.
And I think head coaches who become arrogant, or head coaches who don't last in the role for too long, or head coaches who put their ego first, aren't serving the players. At the end of the day, people come to watch the Sydney Rabbitohs not because of me. They come to watch because of the 13 heroes we put out or the 17 heroes we put out on the field every single week. Now, of course, my job is to prepare them the best as possible, but my job is to serve them. My job is to give them the best environment over there that we can to prepare as best we can. And there's going to be some challenging days, there's no doubt about that. I understand that. I've been around footy for a long time. But that's my job. I'm there to serve them, and that's one thing that you talk about. What the very best do. I saw that with Craig at the Storm. I saw it the last few years with Kevin Walters at Queensland Origin level. As I said, I've had some good mentors and taken away some really key things.
Well, I find it interesting that in all the stuff then that you spoke, and I agree, and I agree, but I find it interesting that in all the stuff that we just spoke about then, I could be mistaken maybe, but football you barely mentioned, like football, because it's a given that you have to have a technical knowledge. You're not going to get. My mum has all those qualities, but she's not going to be a rugby league coach. But I find it interesting that the qualities that you were talking about was not the technical knowledge, was not all of the other stuff. It was based around people management and your ability to deal with people. Yeah, I don't want to paraphrase you. Yeah. But one of the questions then, I suppose, Dave, do you have anything on that? Because I kind of want to segue into teaching and whatnot.
Oh no, just everything around that. It's. I agree with Fab. The essence of it is around relationships. Yeah. Making sure that your staff are happy. Yeah. I manage a wicked team, and everything you said, and around the assistant coach and their role being clear around yours. So it actually, in terms of organisational management, whether it's at a CEO level or whatever, the same structure is cascading. It's really interesting seeing that in relation to rugby league and how you manage a team of 13 players, which is the same as 13 staff.
Well, you got a lot more even, because you've got coaches and staff.
We've got 36 full-time players.
Plus the staff's at probably 45 people.
Yeah, plus, have you guys heard of Todd Sampson at all?
No.
Todd's done a couple of documentaries which the listeners would be worth
Todd Sampson.
Yeah. So he's on, some of you guys might have heard of the Gruen project, which is on ABC. He's one of the guys who sits at the end of the desk.
Okay.
He used to be the CEO of Leo Burnett, advertising agency.
Right.
He's now on the board of Fairfax and Qantas.
Now that you say,
you probably know.
I've heard of him.
Documentaries he's done. He actually did one. He trained as a UFC fighter. You may have seen it.
Yeah,
you should have a look
vaguely,
at it.
You know what I mean?
So the Body Hack is one of the series. Rewire My Brain's another one. A few different things. He actually trained as a UFC fighter for 2 weeks and had a fight. Had his jaw broken.
Yeah, I saw him. I saw that.
And anyway, he's really
Don't ever do that.
No,
that's with David.
No. He's actually a really interesting character. So you know what? And I'm like this. As I sort of got a little bit older, I sort of got a bit bolder. I just contacted him out of the blue. I found his email address through a friend of mine, and he emailed him and said, "G'day Todd, Anthony Seibold here. Just got the head coaching role at Rabbitohs. Really admire what you do. I love creative people. Can I catch up for a coffee?" So just before Christmas, he had a bit of time. I went and caught up with him in Bondi, and man, I spent about 4 or 5 hours with him. He's just a really creative guy. And like, he knows nothing about footy. So, mate, I don't know how I can help you. I said, "You can help me a lot, mate. You know what I mean? Let me talk more about it." And anyway, so I went and met him, and long story short, we had an unbelievable conversation for about 4 or 5 hours. And there was one thing I took away. When he got the job as the CEO of Leo Burnett, they're a big American company, and they sort of put him up in front of all the big wigs over there in the States, he was telling me. And they said, "Okay, what's important to you, Todd?" And he told me, he said, well, in this order, people, product and profit. They're the 3 key things that I'm going to bring to the CEO role in Australasia. And they went, "Okay, how about you just move number 3 up to number 1?" Yeah. And
flip the whole thing around.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
And move everyone down. And he said, "Well, if you want me to do that, you've got the wrong person." And so going back to, I was talking before about relationships and that, even at that highest end business world, he was all about people, and he challenged me, something that I went away and did. He challenged me, said, he said, "How many players you got in your group?" And I said, 36. He said, if I said, "Now if I pulled out a pen and paper," because I had notes and I'm scribbling, they said, if I pulled out a pen and paper there, could you write down the ignition or the purpose or the motivation of every one of your players in your squad? And I went, he put me right on the spot. And I said, "Shit, mate," I said, "I reckon I'd probably be really confident for about 10 blokes."
Which is good, man.
Yeah.
No. So you even have that, but honestly, to have that for 10 people,
no, I thought out of the 36, I was, and he said, "Well, you got 26 blokes who you work with, who you influence, who you need performing at their best for you, that you need to get to know better." And I went, "Shit," like he put me on the back foot a little bit. So one of the first things I did after that, I met with every player, and I already had planned to meet every player with what I call an IPP, which is an individual performance plan. Got the idea through the All Blacks, and it's a really effective way to give feedback and so on. But anyway, part of that review was I asked 3 questions: what's your purpose / ignition / motivation to play rugby league? What's going to be a challenge for you, and what can I do for you as a coach? So how can I serve you for you to get better? And those were the 3 questions I asked, and it was one of the most productive. It took me a week to get through all 36, as you'd appreciate, because we're training as well, and we had our own video reviews and whatever else. But it took me a week to do all 36 players. But it's been the best thing that I've done so far, because I've got to know what Fab, what your motivation is, what's going to be a challenge for you this year, and then what you need from me. And for a lot of the guys, I just want you to be honest and give me feedback. That's what I need from you. You know what I mean? Don't beat around the bush. Just give me feedback. And I won't go on what the motivations were or what the challenges were, but it was a fascinating insight. And as I said, Todd poked me and said, "Well, you got 26 boys, who you need to know better." So I've spent a lot of time, investing in relationships, and I know that's not football. And people, who watch this who are Rabbitohs supporters, they're going to know, well, what are you going to do from a footy point of view? Well, we've worked a lot on the X's and O's.
I think it's a given. That's a given. You know how to play.
That's a given, mate. And my experiences of having worked with Melbourne Storm, and the players and the coaching group they've got there. My experiences of working with the Queensland Origin side for the last 2 years, with Kevy Walters and the playing group they've got there. I know footy, but me knowing footy and being able to coach footy is not, going to give us a better season. But if I know the players a little bit better and know what motivates them individually and what challenges they've got and what they need from me and how I can serve them, then we're more of a chance of doing better things this year, in my opinion, in any case.
You know what I see, and I always talk about this with people with coaching or whatnot, like with relationships. It's like we work in a very one-to-one sport.
Yeah.
And so you have that. You're very close with that particular person. Some people aren't, and I don't even know how they coach. But then you see people like they're in marriages don't even know like what their partner like you know what their partner likes to eat, you know what I mean? And then I think like if you take that and expand it further, you know, or narrow it down, whichever way you want to look at it. So like how many people in any relationship you're trying to do something together, whether you're working together, like sitting side by side, whether you're with your partner or whatever, and you don't even understand what motivates them, where they want to go, what they want to do. And then I think sometimes if you've got someone in your life and they just want to, I don't know, man, whatever, they just want to work 20 hours a week, etc., and you're just pushing them to get a job and to climb the corporate ladder, and they're like, dude, I don't want to do that. You're never going to be happy, you know what I mean? And if you're not happy, you're not going to perform.
No, but that's the thing.
With as far as organisational psychology, so to speak, or organisational management, what are the similarities that you find, if any, with an education structure, academia, etc., and the football, like a football team structure? And what would you do this with? Like, could you interchange, or do you find similarities? Do you think, you know, could one learn from the other?
Certainly, you can find similarities. There's no doubt about that. Like as far as organisational structure and that's concerned, you know, we have you know, you're talking about org charts specifically, and you know, the different roles and how they sort of, I suppose, you know, combine with each other and who answers to who. Look, you know, I think. You know, effectively, we've got a model that's probably really similar to American sports here, and
at Souths or in the NRL?
At Souths, yeah. Insofar as we have a general manager of football and we have a CEO, and the CEO looks after the commercial arm of the club. So you think about sponsorships, memberships, you know, marketing, you know, anything to do from I suppose you know, an income stream or a marketing stream. You know, the general manager of football's got a very different role. His role is to oversee the head coach, and his role is to, I suppose, you know, look after salary cap, look after budgets, look after rosters, and you know, obviously in consultation with the head coach. So I suppose in many ways, you know, I see a lot of similarities, you know, from university level and the organisational structure of that, you know, like you've got your chancellors and vice chancellors and you know, your senior lecturers and so on. But effectively, the head coach in my role looks after you know, everybody down, you know, so from the assistant coaches, the skills coaches, the head of performance, you know, the medical staff, you know, they're all sort of, you know, in my umbrella, if that makes sense. So I report to the general manager, and I think the structure that we've got here is very effective. I think it's you know, it's very similar to as I said, to some of the American clubs, but the AFL clubs effectively have this type of structure. I certainly know from my experience at Melbourne Storm they do as well. And what it allows me to do, and this is where I'm sort of going with along with the story, what it allows me to do is focus on the main thing. So Pat Riley, the old basketball coach from the USA, and you know, he coached a number of sides there. He had a little saying, and it's as a head coach, keep the main thing the main thing. So what he means is, you know, my focus or my priority should be on coaching the team, building relationships with the players, building rapport with the assistant coaches and challenging the assistant coaches and the staff. And my job's not to go and you know, to a business meeting. You know, my job's not to go and do marketing for the club. My job's not to even sit in on every single salary cap meeting or recruitment meeting or sitting down with player managers. You know, the general manager is entrusted to do that, and you know, then you know, I have updates. You know, because if I'm spending all my time away from the playing group and away from the staff, we're not gonna grow as a group. And you know, so that's one thing that I think this you know, you talk about you know, organisational structure and so on, and you know, I'm really comfortable and really happy that we've got this structure in place, because what it does do, it allows me to keep the main thing the main thing. Yeah.
How important is it to have the ability and the faith and confidence in your people around you to be able to delegate?
Yeah, I'm really fortunate. So I've got two very experienced assistant coaches. So David Ferner, who was an ex-elite player, I played with him at the Raiders, played for Australia. But Dave, when he finished playing footy, actually came back and he did an apprenticeship. He did his apprenticeship, coaching lower grades at the Raiders, and eventually became head coach there. He's been an assistant coach at the Cowboys, assistant coach of Australia, and he's now an assistant coach. So I've got a really good rapport with Dave. I really trust him.
He's a good dude.
Yeah, you know Dave.
Yeah.
Really trust him in what he does. He's got a really good rapport with the players, and he's been through the good times and the bad times. You know what I mean? So he's very experienced. And one thing you can't do, because you'll drive yourself mad, is get too high when you have a win, whether as an assistant coach or head coach, or get too low when you have a loss. Because if you do that, you're just going to be emotionally a wreck, as you guys would know.
Man, it's funny you say that. One of the things that we implemented with and I don't know where we exactly learnt the stuff from. I mean, working with guys like yourselves, working with other coaches and that. But one of the things we try and do is when you have your warm ups, you have your everything that you have. So we control what we can control. I can't control if it's going to snow in Bulgaria if we're there. So we control everything you can control, and I can't control the outcome, but I can control whether or not post fight who we have in the room to a certain extent.
Yeah.
We sit down, have a feed, do whatever we're going to do with the same people. And I say this with Rob, and Rob, now that he's a little bit kids, try and be with the same people doing the same thing you would be doing if you lost. Because what you say, I think about, Dave Ferner and other people that have been around is they've won and they've lost. And and any sport, but I think collision sports, combat sports, it's very similar. It's if you're not prepared, Mark Hunt said this. I don't know if you know who Mark Hunt is. And someone I've always looked up to him, but he said a real simple.
Scary man.
Yeah, he is. And he said, if you're, and I'm paraphrasing, so don't bash me if you hear this. He goes, if you can't take an ass whooping, then you shouldn't be in this sport.
Yeah.
And it's crude, but it's 100% true. So we try and with Rob and that we try not to celebrate with people that aren't going to be there when he loses, because he will lose.
Yeah,
100%.
It's a good mentality to have, and that's why it's important to have guys like Dave. And then the other guy I was going to mention is Peter Jennell. Pete's early 50s. He's coached his own Super League team. He's been assistant with the Kangaroos, assistant West Tigers with Tim Sheen. He's been assistant Parramatta with Brad Arthur. Been assistant at Cronulla. So he's been he's been through the ups and the downs and so on. So to have two really experienced guys there is really important. And then we've got a young guy called Willie Peters, who's a skill development coach, an old Rabbitohs player, and he's a bit younger, and he's sort of got a closer age to the players, and he's he's a really passionate sort of a Rabbitohs man. So the immediate coaching staff below me have got different strengths and different personalities, which is really important. That diversity, and I trust I can trust them to get what I think needs to be done. I can delegate to them, and they'll disagree at times. There's no doubt about that, but they commit. I keep coming back to disagree and commit. That's what you want from assistant coaches. Sometimes they'll agree, but you've got to have that mentality. Listen, throw all your opinions out there, but at the end of the day, the ultimate decision is going to come back to the head coach.
You're going to have to have that.
Yeah.
That. Now what are we looking at? We're in the pre-season, finishing up pre-season.
Yeah, pretty much. Last week was our first practice model, I'll call it, or in-season model. So we played Wigan, which are one of the big Glenmore English teams last week. We had a good win with a whole lot of younger players playing. That we only had 4 guys who played more than 50 games, so it's a pretty young squad, filled with plenty of potential. But it's just really enjoyable to see them go out there and try and transfer what we've been doing in practice. So that was really good. But I talk about I'm a big believer in routines and what you do on the field. What you do on the training paddock transfers to the field. So last week we had our first week where we prepared as if it was in season, because we wanted to get some feedback from the senior players. We wanted to get some feedback from different staff members on what's good about the week, what can we improve, because we don't want to jump into round one and then throw that week at the boys for the first time and it sort of goes, doesn't go to plan, or it's a little bit, a bit clunky and the preparation's not where it needs to be. So we've had a really good practice last week. We're having a really good practice this week of an in-season model leading into our Dragons Charity Shield game, and then at the end of this 2-week block we'll review the last 2 weeks, and if we need to make some minor changes leading into round one, as far as we'll just change that meeting here, or change that field session time to here, or the little bits and pieces that go into the detail within the program we can manipulate if need be. But we wanted to have this 2 weeks as like a practice run for round one, if that makes sense.
How hard is it to come back from, say, for example, you didn't have the best season last year,
yeah.
but I ask this in this way: would you rather inherit the team off the back of a bad season, or with the pressure of a great season?
You know what? I haven't thought about that too much. I mean, it was a challenging year last year. There's no doubt about that. I really felt for Madge, because he invested 6 years at the club.
It's not like he's coaching any less. He's just
100%.
Trying as hard as he could.
Exactly, mate. Great work ethic, and we were all working really hard here. But for whatever, one reason or another, things just
that's a game.
Didn't go well for the club last year. And, would I rather inherit the team off the back of a tough season or at the very top? I don't know.
Because there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, well, I see the Roosters. The Roosters have gone out and recruited some big-time players, Tedesco, Cronk. There's enormous pressure on them as a club, because effectively they've gone out and signed 2 of the best players in their position, almost, adding them to a team that finished second in the season proper last year. So there's a lot of pressure on them. If the reality is for us, I don't think anyone's really tipped us to be in the top 8. Some people even tipped us to be going towards the bottom of the table.
In this coming season?
Yeah, for this coming season. But the reality of it is, a couple of years ago, the Rabbitohs were high flying, and it was the team everyone wanted to beat, and they were a bit of the glamour team, I suppose, in some ways, because the profile of the club's enormous. It wasn't until I sort of got into this role that I knew the profile of the club here, in real sense. But we're the hunters now, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? We got to go and hunt the top 8, the top 10 teams, because the reality of it is, as a club, we finished 12th 2 years in a row. So if we kept doing the same things as a club, well, that's sort of crazy. So we've had to make some changes. There hasn't been massive changes with their roster. We brought in Dane Gagai, and Greg Inglis obviously is going to be back on the park.
How big of an impact are those two?
Yeah, big. Yeah, big. Dane's at the top of his game. He played for Australia in the World Cup. He man of the series for the Origin team. I've worked with him very closely there. He is a hell of a good professional, and he's got an energy about him. Some people got energy about him. He's got an energy. So he's got a presence about him. He's got energy, and so he's not an energy sapper. He's an energy giver, and I like energy givers in our group, because probably what Alex said before, I'm pretty serious these days. I used to be a bit of fun, but we want energy givers, in our group, and that's what he gives. And Greg's just, his presence in the group is can't be underestimated. When he's playing footy, when he plays at his best, he's in the top 2-3 players in rugby league. So he's an icon of our game. So the confidence that the players get around him. And it's funny, I remember I went for a coffee with the Origin side this year. Get a really good relationship with Cooper Cronk, and we played the Storm in Perth. So we flew back on the red-eye flight to Brisbane, because we were going into the Origin camp.
When was this?
This is last year. Yeah, so Greg was injured round 1, and Greg obviously normally is an Origin team. Anyway, we flew back. We caught a cab from the airport to our hotel, checked in, and the rest of the team and the staff weren't coming in until 5 o'clock that evening. But we had to catch the red-eye from Perth to get back there in time. Anyway, so we went for a coffee, and I remember Coop saying, I still remember this, he said, it's going to be strange not having Big Greggy in the team, you know. And I said, what do you mean? You know, of course it is from a footy point of view. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, just his presence. He said, I know that, you know, in the change room before a game, and I look across and I see Greg there, I know that even if we're down by 6 points or down by 8 points, you know, he can do something that other players can't do. And he's you know, you've seen.
And you're glad you're not playing against him too. Yeah.
What he's doing at training is crazy, you know. He's 112 kilos, 6'3" or 4", whatever he is, and can run. You know what I mean? But like Coops just sort of alluded to the fact that when he's out there, even if you're down, you know you're a chance. You know, because the special players, you know, like your Slaters and your GIs. You know, probably your Andrew Johns in the past, you know, your Jonathan Thurstons, those sort of guys. And we didn't have JT in that game either. But yeah, just Cooper singled out Greg and what his presence does for him and the confidence of the group. And I thought it probably made a bit of sense to me, because I was thinking about our situation here at the time. We had a few good wins, we pushed Storm really hard, but we just didn't, you know, like Greg's an X factor that not many teams have got. So, you know, it's not going to be about putting all the pressure on him for us to do well.
No,
this
no,
year,
of course not.
Do you know what I mean? Like when an elite player like Cooper Cronk, we've got that much respect for, sort of says that about someone thinking, gosh, you know, like that. You know, I didn't realise how much confidence he gives even new, very, very elite players. You know what I mean? So, and we got wiped out in that first Origin game. You know what I mean? We made some changes and some young guys come in, but it's interesting that Coop sort of said that. Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed was when we went last year, Rob and I went away. That was a good speech by Rob. It resulted in like one of the worst losses. And we'll never have Rob on there again. Obviously,
it was a challenging night, wasn't it? Yeah.
Oh,
they were outstanding. They were through the roof. But yeah, it was really challenging.
But one of the things I noticed was like the guys in the team were there was still a good feel in the team leading into it and even afterwards, like speaking to the guys in that, they were.
The group here is really a really humble, hard-working group. You know, even last year, it was a challenging year. You know, it was a shit of a year because we weren't winning as many games as we wanted, and we weren't performing like we wanted to, and certainly not how we, you know, what we had planned to. You know. But I'll tell you one thing about the group that's here and that I've inherited is that the work ethic of the players is outstanding, and you know, the compliance of the group. That, you know, they're not a whingy group. They weren't a whingy group. You would have seen that, like, you know, like
mate. You know what I really admired, that it did not spiral out of control. Maybe it did behind closed doors, but I was like close enough to the action that, like you.
No, it didn't spiral out of control behind closed doors.
But it could easily, surely.
It could easily, because when you're having a challenging time, when you lose a game like that, it's really easy to, you know, start pointing fingers.
Yeah, but in general, like even in the season, like because I was there while it was pretty bad.
Yeah.
And because when it's good, everyone's good.
Yeah, of course.
That's easy. Like, you know, Rob's got the title right now, and he's won 8 fights in a row, and we're all geniuses, and everyone's awesome.
Yeah.
It's like, no, and I don't care for us, but for him, obviously, it's going to be the hardest thing. Like whatever you guys were doing, which my next question is going to be, what were you doing to not let that get toxic?
Yeah.
Not let it get totally out of control. I'm sure it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's challenging, you know, when your group's not performing, like you want the group to perform. It could be challenging. I think there's a couple of things. Last year, the reality of it was we effectively had 9 players, 21 or younger, play for the team. You know, which is like everyone talks about Newcastle Knights and how young they were, and they finished 3 wooden spoons in a row. Well, we had a very similar age group. You know, we just had a bit more profile than guys like Sam and you know, Tom and George and a few of the other guys. Obviously, Greg was injured and Adam Reynolds, but we had a really young group. So why it didn't spiral out of control? A lot of those younger boys were really passionate about representing the Bunnies, if that made sense.
Yep.
And your Cam Murray's, your Tyra Ramonas, your Rob Jennings, your Campbell Graham. I think Campbell was going to school at, I can't remember if it was Marcelin or Patriot, but he was going to school during the day, finishing lunchtime on a Friday and playing Friday night footy at the SCG and stuff like
crazy,
that. You know,
yeah.
It's crazy, mate. You know, like. So you don't think they want to go out and represent the Bunnies? Mate, they're passionate about the Bunnies. So we had a really good young group. I didn't see the work ethic of the group drop off. If I had seen the work ethic of the group, I think, oh shit, we're doomed here. But you have a look at the last game that we played against Parramatta last year, and they finished top 4. We'd been beaten by 60 the week before. We had 9 regular players out for the last game. Damien Cook, who's a hooker, played fullback. Luke Kelly had only played 1 game all year, was halfback.
Was that Melbourne game you're talking about?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Because that Melbourne game was like, I was hoping you weren't going to ask me to play.
Yeah, no,
honestly, because
so
we were running out of players.
I remember that. Yeah, no. But the next week we battled to put a team together. And what I will say is, we lost 22-18. We're probably the better side against Parramatta on the night, and they were a top 4 team. You know that they were going to play the Storm the following week, you know, as they deserved to for finishing the top 4. And maybe they had eyes on bigger things ahead, but the effort and the energy, if you get whopped by 60 points like we did the week before, and you know you've only got 1 game to go and you can't make the playoffs, and you know you're going to finish 12th regardless. You know, there was no way we could have finished higher. There was no way I think we could finish lower. But for them to go out there just showed a lot of pride in the jersey and a lot of effort, you know, and to cut, you know, they were a shandy away from beating the top 4 side with a team that had players out of position, had guys who hadn't really played all year, and they gave it a red hot crack. And so one thing I will say, you know, like, that there has been a change of head coach and so on, but I don't think that the group, has ever lost that work ethic or sort of desire to represent the Rabbitohs. You know, what we've tried to do is just, you know, make some, not throw out everything, because there's some, you know, the club's been very well coached for a long time, but I suppose do things my way, how I want things to be done, and make some minor changes in and around the process, what we do. But the work ethic and the compliance of the group hasn't changed, and we're hopeful, we're optimistic, we're hopeful, whatever word you want to use. You know, which every club would be at this time of year. It's a pretty good time of the year because pre-season, and you've played a trial game and everything's rosy at the moment. But yeah, we're really optimistic, and we're confident in giving a good account of ourselves. But we are also realistic enough to know that we're the hunters this year. You know what I mean? We got to go and try and hunt some of the better teams. You know, because it's a quality competition. It's like the UFC. To win a fight, from what I can see, I think you guys, we could never get into the cage.
Me neither. I don't even like getting into to shake hands with people.
You know what I mean? But I reckon people will watch it, and even though I coach in sport, I don't realise how hard it is for Rob to win a fight against Romero, or I don't understand that because I've never been in that situation. It's like supporters or members or rugby league followers probably don't understand how hard it is to win an NRL game. It's hard.
Man, people say to me sometimes, like, and I'm not like the head coach or nothing. We don't really kind of have that, like a head coach. We've got we've got like a little structure of like a little council, if you will.
Yeah, and talking to Alex and even you when away, I love how you guys work.
But I'll tell you this: like, people go to me, like, there's what I hope and there's what I think will happen, objectively think, which is what I get paid for. You know, like when they say to me, what do you think's going to happen with Rob and Romero? And I'm like, man, 50-50. We've got our game plan. I'm not going to put it out on the thing, but it's 50-50. Like, my mum can look at Romero and know that's not going to be an easy fight. Like, anyone can see that. You know what I mean? And so then they go to me, oh, so you don't have confidence in your guy? And I think, no, I'm not delusional. Like, I understand that Romero is like, people don't even understand what, like, his achievements.
Yeah, it's freak.
He's
a medalist in 2000, wasn't he?
Beg your pardon?
He was a medalist in 2000.
Not only was he a medalist in 2000, silver medalist, he medalled in every world championship for like 10 years, something ridiculous like that. So then, and he's only had one other loss not even at that weight division. So his other loss was in the light heavyweight division against Cavalcante, who's a monster, who's a Strikeforce champion, in the next division up. So for people, when they ask me that and I say, I think the fight's 50-50, it's going to be whoever gets their game off first. And luckily for us on that day, this is the other thing, it went perfect, but honestly, Romero's game plan went perfect too. The only thing was, if it was from rugby league terms, he fumbled the ball 3 times.
Yeah.
And when, there's not much in it. It's, whatever it was, and Rob picked it up.
Yeah.
That's all that happened, and we won by a field goal kind of thing, or a try. Like it wasn't, and even in fights like when Rob fought Tavares, and Rob knocked him out in 45 seconds, people don't understand, if Rob has to fight him again, mate, it's Tavares you have to put him to sleep. Yeah. He's not going to go away. So people don't get that, and I think with the NRL, you only you throw an intercept in the first minute and they score.
They're on the pump,
and it's got nothing to do with what I think, what I hope would happen is Romero falls over and doesn't, Rob just does something to him and he wins. That's what I'd hope happens. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, you talk about that, and your point you said before about controlling what you can. I mean, I've been asked this question 1,000 times now. How are you going to go this year? And I understand. I understand the question, but it drives me bonkers, mate. Because you know what? Look, I can't control what other teams do, and I can't control if the referee gives a good decision or a poor decision here, and you can't control who gets injured. All I can control is what we did today out there on the park by being well planned, being really detailed with our review of the training session. When I go back over there and watch it, so I can, for me, it's about staying in the present. So. And not looking ahead and thinking of I want to be a top 8 team, or I want to finish better than 12th or whatever else, because in a lot of ways
you can't.
It's out of my control. But what I can control is the environment that we put in place, and the planning that we put in place, and actually what we delivered today at training. So we did the job over there today. It was a tick. We got out of what we needed to get out of it, and we'll go and review it aggressively now. And then all I can control is what we do tomorrow. And tomorrow's a recovery day, so you know what? I don't want the players in the place. I want them to go and have a mental freshen up tomorrow. That's what I control. And then the next thing I can control is what we do on Thursday. So I really try and have that narrow focus and try and stay in the present as much as possible, because how the hell would I know how we're going to do? I'm only guessing. I'd be guessing, and you don't know what's going to be presented to you. There's always mountains and hurdles and challenges that you need to climb. So I find the best way for me, and it was even when I was an assistant coach, the best way for me to keep focused is to be really present, if that makes sense, and try and narrow down what I can control. What's it look like for me today as a head coach, or when I was an assistant, what's it look like for me today as an assistant? What do I need to do my job well? And that's what we've that's what I've tried to implement over here across the road.
And it is like in the hands of the football gods, or whatever god you believe in, or none, or whatever, but it's out of your control.
Yeah, it is. And particularly, I'm sitting up in the box, how much influence do I have over the grip in a game? Yeah, you make the interchanges, but at the end of the day, it's what you do during the week. So what we try and do is provide the environment, so we use a lot of, I'm not sure if you guys do this, but we use a lot of scenario-based training, you know what I mean? So we finished the training session today, it was the last 4 minutes. We call it an arm wrestle, so it's a 4-minute arm wrestle. Red team, you're 14, green team, you're 10. So the red team is our first team, the green team is our reserve team. And red team, you're up, 4 minutes to go in the game, go and play it. Because that's how they learn. If I don't expose them to those experiences, we have all different sorts of scenarios. An earlier scenario in the training session was the start of the game, first 4 minutes of the game, first 6 minutes of the game, first 8 minutes of the game, go and play it. How are you going to jump out of the box here today? So they get a picture or a learning opportunity that they can experience that's got context about it. If we just said, okay, boys, we're going to just play against each other for 4 minutes, it doesn't have context to it. It could still potentially learn, but by having a context to it with a scenario, a scoreboard or or you're down to 12 players, you know, how are you going to defend this next 4 minutes with 12 players, which they had to do for a little bit over there today. So that's, you know, talk about the teaching side of things. That's what I think my strength is, that I can bring to our preparation, you know, putting context to it, giving them episodes that they can sort of learn from, you know. So, you know, going back to the start of our conversation, we spoke about worst case scenarios and peak demands and tactical periodization, which I spoke about as just a common sense approach. The other common sense approach is we need to expose the guys to the peak demands of the game. So, you know, if we just look at the average demands, and by the demands I mean, okay, metres per minute, accel, decels squared per minute, high speed running per game, we look at all that detail. We've got the worst case scenarios that each individual and each position specific group has been exposed to last year in the NRL. So we know the percentage individually and collectively that we train above the worst case scenario. So we spent a whole heap of time exposing the guys to the peak demands of the game in our training sessions, and we can review it. And you know, at different times, at different periods of their game, we look to train between 10 and 20% higher than the worst case scenario that we encountered last year. Because at the end of the day, as I said before, we've got the same group of players, so we need to change something. So, you know, our way of doing things is, you know, scenario-based training, exposing them to peak demands of the games during each, you know, at different sections or segments of the training session, and that's a common sense approach. That's a tactical periodization approach, for want of a more simpler word.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, so yeah, that's sort of what we can control. That's what I can control with the planning, and obviously I delegate some of that to the assistant coaches, so it's not always me talking about it.
But I see a lot of parallels in what you're saying, regardless of whether you're coaching rugby league or, I don't know, running a household, or you're I don't know, whatever it is that you're doing, because you can control what you can control.
Yeah.
And if you're worrying about something you can't control, then, you know, you're not even cooking these eggs right.
Yeah.
You're not even doing whatever it is that you're trying to do at that particular moment, because you're so worried about another outcome that is going to happen no matter what you do. And I think, I see that happen with just, you know, now with the whole job interviews and everything that's going at work, and then people are trying to do their job and worry about the interviews and that like TAFE's going through like a restructural period. So it's like it's a brilliant place to be at right now. Did you want to ask anything, say anything?
No, I just like the concept of being present in the moment. We actually heard that from Rob as well. Just like, because I asked Rob about, you know, what do you actually think about when you're walking to the cage and you're going to step into this cage, this guy's going to fully smash the crap out of you, and you go, just being present in the moment. And I think, you know, that's the core of what you just said around being present in the moment. And you can't control what you can control, but you can control the preparation, which is a very powerful message.
Well, a lot of people sort of said to me, "Oh, yeah, you're under pressure, or you must feel the pressure." You know, now you're in the hot seat. They call it the hot seat. But everything in sport, everything in life, it's all a cycle. You know what I mean? Like you're only in that particular role for X amount of time, and you know that you're going to get a tap on the shoulder. You know, we're only here on Earth for a certain amount of time. You know, so. Everything's a cycle in life, so I don't sit there fretting about the day when I get a tap on the shoulder and they say, "Oh, you're not the Rabbitohs coach anymore." You know what? It's going to happen. It's going to happen. That's the sport goes.
Even the best case scenario, you're going to be moved into a different role.
Yeah, sport moves in cycles. This is my opportunity. Well, this is my cycle now. Here, so I'm very conscious of that. I'm very present around that fact. But if I fret about the outcome, I'm not doing my role. So talking about staying in the present, that's a really important thing for me to do. And when in my head I go to the outcome, you know, I've got some strategies in place where it brings me back to the here and now. You know what I mean? And I think that's important for a player, an athlete, or in whatever sport that we're involved with. You know, so I've spent a lot of time, developing those skills myself. You know, and it's a work on still.
One of the things we were talking about this yesterday, with just like in general, you know, about staying in the moment, where even people can't stay in the moment in a conversation, and it's like, you know, when you're trying to build something, people want to build, you know, the pyramids, and you go, dude, you got to do a sandcastle first, you know, and sometimes you're talking to people and you can tell that, everyone's mind wanders, but you're talking to people sometimes and they are not with you. No. They are quietly orbiting Jupiter. And I noticed that, like, just in the most basic of things, where people cannot be in the moment. They're not there. But Dave, you're a fan of South Sea.
I'm a season ticket holder. And I tried to relax when I saw the Burgess brothers walk through a couple of minutes ago. But long term fan. Yeah, I think it's family tradition, heritage. It's 3 years. That's why South fans are full on. So
I know. We're really fortunate. As a club, we're really fortunate that we've got such a big supporter base, such a big membership base, and it's really long lasting. You know what I mean? Because you think less than 20 years ago, the club was out of the comp. It was extinct. It was almost dead and buried. So. I think everyone who's involved with the club here are really appreciative of the fact that this is a special club. It's got a long history and great legacy. So for me, I'm just privileged that I've got an opportunity to coach at the club. I'm really I'm aware of the privilege that comes with that, and as I said, South's a very passionate supporter base and membership base. Yeah.
What's that like for you? Like, I mean, I only on an intellectual level, people say to me, when everyone else has got 3,000 fans, South's has got 15,000 fans. Yeah. I don't know, whatever. I just made that up. Yeah. But they say that, and I can sort of appreciate that. But I can't. Like, what's it like viscerally, like being in a situation where you have that amount of support, but that amount of expectation and possibly that amount of backlash? Like, do you feel that as a coach?
It's a funny one because we've only played the one trial game. We had a good result. And it was a good performance by our younger guys. I don't read social media. I don't
read the YouTube comments.
I don't engage in social media. I don't because I mean, you could spend your life worrying about that, but like, who really knows who's writing the comment? Often they're anonymous or they've got nicknames or whatever, and it could be a 15-year-old girl or a 16-year-old boy or a 50-year-old man or a 60-year-old lady. I don't know. I don't know what their motivation is or whatever else. So. As I said, not everyone's going to agree with what I do or the decisions I make. I understand that, but if I start listening to the members, or if I start listening to the supporters, in a real short time, I'll get a tap on the shoulder and I'll be sitting up there with them. You know what I mean? Yep. So I just try and make the decisions that I think are best for the club. Now, are they always going to be right? No, but neither is the Prime Minister's, or neither is whoever it is, in leadership. And you learn, you learn through failures, you learn through successes, you learn through, where you potentially handle, I'm always learning, I think, the day I'm not learning, then probably the day for me to give up as a coach. But I understand what you're saying. Like, it's a big club, and it's funny. Like, I've sort of, as an assistant coach in a lot of ways, particularly at club level, you live a really anonymous existence to the wider rugby league public. Your hardcore supporters will know you and so on, but you live a really anonymous existence. Now, the only thing that probably prepared me for this role has been the last few years where I've been assistant coach at Origin level, and Kevy Wallace.
Are you this going to
be?
No,
I've had to.
How does that work? I don't know.
I run Kevy Wallace and I just said, listen, mate, what do you think? This is what I'm thinking. He said, no, it's too hard for you to do both roles.
Okay, so generally if you're a full-time coach, you wouldn't be...
You're not a head coach, assistant coach, and that's what I've done the last few years, and the head coaches have allowed me to do it because it's great for my development. It's great for the clubs that I've been involved with to be part of that team, and Queensland being so successful, every man and their dog would want to be involved with that. I loved it, and certainly I didn't want to give it up, but I knew I had to. I couldn't be selfish. It would have been selfish of me to keep that role and then try and do this role, because then potentially you're not given everything to both roles. So that is sort of...
I have a question. How hard is it for you to, coach person X, it's week in, week out, but then you coach against them in Origin.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Then you see the dude.
You know what? I'm trying to think. So players I work with at club level who play for the Blues.
Yeah.
I don't think I had that.
Reynolds?
No, because I wasn't working with Reno when he played for the Blues.
And English.
Dylan Walker. I was coaching Dylan Walker at the time when I was coaching assistant coach of Queensland. Dylan Walker was playing for Manly, so I had one season assistant coach at Manly, and Dylan was playing for the Blues.
How hard is it to exploit idiosyncrasies in that particular player? What are you laughing at?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm genuine.
Like it's funny, because you obviously know their strengths and weaknesses. But I go back to, I remember Craig Bellamy coached the Blues for a few years, and obviously Cameron Smith and Slater and Cronk and Dallas Johnson. There was 4 or 5 Queenslanders that he loved and worked with every day for a long, long time. And then all of a sudden he's the Blues coach. You know what I mean? And I know he found it quite difficult coaching against the guys that he was coaching every single day. So I'd imagine it'd be really difficult. With Dylan, I think he only played the first 2 Origin games and it was off the bench. So, a big part of our preparation wasn't revolved around him. But if I was Craig Bellamy and coaching New South Wales and you're coaching against Queensland, Slater and Smithy and Cooper Cronk would have been right at the very top of your list that you're trying to...
They are the people
you're looking at, along with Thurston, they're 3 of the 4 guys you're going, right, well, this is what we've got to do here, this is his strength, this is his weakness. So that would have been really challenging, I would have thought, but...
Because someone like Bellamy, I don't know a great deal about rugby league, but my understanding about Bellamy is that as far as like the rugby league career of those guys, he was instrumental. He's had them since they were young.
I think they would have been all 18 or 19 when Bellick first got hold of them. So
he'd be the relationship would be insane.
They're like sons to him, in a lot of ways. I mean, they're very tight, So that would have been challenging, But going back to the role, what it did enable me to do is, Kevy put me out there in front of the media. I'd always do the last media conference and be like, 20, how big Origin is. On game day, I'd do the last media call, and there'd be 20 or 30 reporters or whatever, and you're going out live on Channel 9 or Fox Sports, and they're asking you sort of some tricky sort of questions. So at least I was exposed to that, and then through that, I probably got more recognition in rugby league as far as people sort of knowing who you are and where you've been and what you've been doing. But it's different. Like you'll get Rabbitoh supporters, walk past you and say g'day and how are we going to go and whatever else, and you sort of you chat and so on. But as I said, I know that there'll be some challenging days and and you cop a bit of stick on social media or whatever else. But what do you do?
So what? Sorry, Dave.
Well, just saying, when you're presenting live and stuff, Fab and I have spoken about it a bit. How does the teaching help with that sort of stuff? So, doing it on a podcast, asking questions for Fab and I, because we're constantly talking to people, teaching. It comes naturally. So, do you find that comes naturally?
Yeah, it does. We talked about transferable skills there before. Getting up and presenting in front of a group. Now, when I lectured, there'd be sometimes 100 odd students in the lecture theatre. You know what I mean? Or when I've taught in classes, there's 28, 30 odd kids there. Well, it's the same when you get up in front of a group. I've had to talk in front of the group today with 36 players plus a whole heap of staff. So you're talking to 40 odd people and having to engage them or whatever. So I reckon those things help you. I guess never really fazed me doing live. Like a live interview. Like a 30-second or a minute interview or whatever you had to do for the Origin. It's never really fazed me. I reckon the teaching's helped me enormously with my presenting skills and asking, when I'm talking to the players, asking them questions and framing up questions and framing up responses to answers to then engage them with the next question. Like I'm really comfortable doing that in front of a class, and then when I've been asked questions in front of the media, it hasn't been too bad. I mean, there'll be times when we lose or whatever, and they'll throw up some tricky questions or whatever at you, but I don't feel uncomfortable. I think that the teaching has helped with having clarity and being able to deliver a message and so on.
I think as well, I think academia and everything we discussed, but I think high school teaching is funny as well, because I'm not a high school teacher by trade, but we run programs through TAFE.
Yeah, of course.
Where you're teaching high school kids, and depending on how you end up, you might be teaching high school kids all week, and they just don't care. That like if you go out there, and I think maybe TAFE and university, they come at you a little bit different, but like high school kids, if like they go like, oh yeah, I can get away with this, they won't care. So you have to have a certain ability to you have to have a thick skin.
100%.
You know what I mean?
The most challenging times I've had, it's not talking in front of the NRL boys or the Origin boys or whatever. I can remember when I was, I taught Year 9 for the first time.
Imagine that. They have no fear of consequence.
Just didn't care. They would try and keep their attention and try and teach and engage them. It's great grounding for coaching in a lot of ways, because you're trying to deliver a message and there's distractions and whatever else, but
and the distractions don't have to be big.
No.
You try and explain that to people as well as a teacher. Like sometimes, like I don't know, you're somewhere and you're like, please don't do that, because I'm talking to them. They're 16 or 15, whatever. It could be anything.
Yeah,
just like, do not mess it up in the middle. We had a class where we started these classes with 3-year-old kids, 3-year-olds doing grappling at our gym, and with people like sometimes you see parents like you've got 10, 15 3-year-olds lined up against a wall, which is not easy to do, and you'll have a parent like say something. I just want to say something in the middle of the class, and I think
distracts everyone.
Quiet. You know how hard it is. You know how hard it is to get them to just be quiet. It's hard.
Yeah.
So what happens now for you today? So now you fit, because first the other thing is thank you very much for your time.
Yeah,
because
really enjoyed it.
I know how busy you are and everything. Rob would have been here. He's at the Commonwealth Games training camp at the moment. But like I'm under no illusion of how busy you are and how valuable this time of yours is. Like me, and I'm sure the other guys.
And it's my pleasure too, because got to know you a little bit last year, and Alex. I really respect you guys, and obviously, I've admired Rob from afar, and obviously, got to meet him a couple of times as well. So no, it's more of probably a pleasure for me to
reciprocate it. I can assure you.
Jump in there with you guys.
So what happens now? You drive home.
Yeah. So what I'll do? So what I normally I'm normally here till about 6:30. I try and leave the traffic die down a bit. But what it does do, I'll go back here this afternoon. I'll cut up today's training, so the components of the training session that I need to cut up. The other coaches we've delegated who sort of cuts what vision. We send that to our football analyst. He puts it up on Huddle. So that's my first job when I go back. I'll cut train and he puts it up on Huddle, which is it's an app that we use on the iPad, so the boys get to see their vision tonight. So any clip, let's just say it's Sam Burgess. He gets an alert that he's got some vision to watch, and so there's 6 or 7 or 8 clips that are associated with Sam. Might only be 2 minutes of vision, but he gets that, and he gets an opportunity to watch it on his iPad. So he promotes conversation when he comes in the next day. So, Seeves, I saw you set that one there, I beat the inside shoulder. I needed to get screwed off the line. So it promotes them coming to you. So, it doesn't always have to be you going to grab them and say, right, this is what you've got to do. By sending it out tonight, it's called flip teaching, flip learning. I'm sure you've sort of, know that.
You're putting the onus back on them to create the conversation.
Flip the classroom,
peer mentoring, getting them to teach whatever.
We might follow up with them tomorrow, or the coaches will follow up with them tomorrow, but that's what we do. So our first job now, pardon me, is go back, cut that. I've started writing some notes for the tip sheet against the Dragons this week. So, some key notes that we give out a tip sheet to the players on Friday. And so I'll just start to make some notes in and around that. So I leave here normally as a rule by 6:30, or at 6:30, which gets me home. I live over on the Northern Beaches, so it gets me home about 7:15, 7:30. But pretty much all my work's done, if that makes sense for the day. I do try and get home and just spend a little bit of time with the kids, and sort of got a bit of a rule. I've got to come in and not have my phone with me and sit down and have dinner with the kids. So I do that, Yeah, you know what I mean? But it's hard to stop thinking about, I just find at the moment it's hard for me to stop thinking, you know? So last night, like, it's bizarre. I've been up since 1:30 this morning, you know? So it's crazy.
Well, this is my next question. Yeah. What time do you get up? What time do you go to sleep?
Well, I normally fall asleep about 9:30, 10 o'clock. I'm pretty routine with that. But like getting up, like I had my alarm set anywhere between 4:30 and say 10 past 5. So depending on what day,
what's required,
what's required. Because I always like to come in and have a little bit of a train. And some days we start with a meeting at 6:30, so I need to get it done before then. So it varies, but I miss all the traffic by coming in early. But yeah, you know, I imagine it's like, you know, you're leading up to a big fight. You know, say for instance. You know, you've got a couple of busy days coming up.
No, it's full on, yeah.
Like last night I was in a real deep sleep. I woke up at 1:30 and I just had all these things, okay, I've got to do that tomorrow, so I've got to do that, I've got to do that. And it's hard, it was just hard for me to get back to sleep. So I tried to get back to sleep. I couldn't, I kept thinking of different things. So I just jumped up at 4:30 and I drove in this morning. So, but the thing is, I can't not show the players' energy, if that makes sense. Because you know, talk about
nobody cares what happened to you.
Yeah, energy suckers and energy givers. If I'm not on point and concise and clear with my message, you know, like we showed some of the Dragon stuff today. Like I showed their attack trends, and Dave Furner showed their defence trends. You know, in 2 different meetings. You know, if I'm not engaging with that, if I'm not well planned with, you know, I've got a bit of OCD with planning, so. But if I'm not engaging, I'm not energetic, and I'm not asking questions and engaging the group, and then when we're on the training field, if I'm not doing my job because I wake up at 1:30, well, you know, I'm not doing justice. So yeah, that becomes the nature of the job. I'm sure any you know, one in different leadership positions, and they, you know, they're always thinking. As I said, I've got a pretty sort of creative sort of mind. Normally I can sleep through till, you know, 4 o'clock, 4:30. It's pretty good, but just for whatever reason last night, I just sort of had so many things sort of, you know, running through the mind. As I said, I'm normally pretty good at being able to, you know, refocus and draw it back. But yeah, so yeah, we've had a good day training. I'm really happy with what we've done, and I'll go back and review it now and get on to my next job, and you know, get home and have dinner with the kids and. You know, it all happens again, I suppose, tomorrow, you know, so it's probably like you guys, you know, so
yeah,
it's the same in whatever industry, you know.
I think, again, transferable skills is like, you know, we have these conversations with Rob and with other athletes and other young guys coming through, or just other people. What are you going to do? Like, what is it that you want to do? If you want to work 9 till 3, and spend the rest of the time surfing. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
I think that's awesome. But you're not going to expect that you're going to be NRL winning coach.
No.
You're not going to be the world champion surfer either.
No.
So then you start to understand that there's people out there. And I had a conversation with someone about this the other day. But like I said, like I hope that you don't do your job right, because I'm going to try. And there's dudes out there that are coaching against you, you know, that are getting up at 4:30 in the morning, and they're not getting home till 7:30 at night, and they're waking up at 1:30 in the morning, going, I can't go back to sleep, and they're off, you know. And so if you want to get up at 8 o'clock, someone's been up 100%. For 4 hours working already. So good luck, you know.
You know, it's I'm not sure if you've seen the Tom versus Time. The documentaries, it's documentaries on Tom Brady at the moment that all the boys have been watching them over here, and on one of the episodes talks about Tom Brady. Says, if you're going to beat me this weekend, or if you're going to beat me on Sunday, then you need to have a real good work ethic, because I'm watching X amount of vision, I'm doing this amount in the gym, I'm doing that amount on the field, and like I know how hard belly ache works, you know what I mean? So if I think that I can keep myself and you know, work a 7 a.m. in the morning till, you know, 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon roll and prepare the team in that amount of time, then I'm kidding myself, you know what I mean? Because, as you say, like, you know, you need to obviously be smart about what you do, but you need to have a good work ethic, and you need to sacrifice some things. And you know, like I think when I got the job, they sort of said, "Oh, I was an overnight success," and I sort of said, "Well,
of course you were."
Yeah, I said, "Well, I've done an apprenticeship 3 times longer than the chicks down the road." You know what I mean? So,
Because you were selling hot dogs at the beach the week before.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, like, I know what it takes to get the job done. But does that guarantee success? No, it doesn't. But I can control what I do, and can control the environment that we sort of provide for the group, and I'll continue to work on getting that better, improving it, and then, when my cycle's done, whenever that is, hopefully I'll leave a decent legacy for the next guy. And like I said, I'm only at the very start of my journey as a head coach, so it's all before me. Like I haven't. I haven't been a head coach in the NRL, so it's all brand new. So it's quite exciting, but it's also, it's going to be challenging. So
okay, awesome. Well, I guess we'll wrap it up and let you finish up. Oh, this is just one of our club shirts, mate, for you.
I love these shirts. Cheers, mate.
Thanks, mate. Thank you so much for your time, Anthony. Thanks.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having us on.
Thank you, David and Eli, for everything. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you.